Baroness Scott of Needham Market.
I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
The Government welcomes the report and its conclusions. The net zero transition will bring many challenges at the local level, but it will also create vital opportunities to level up. The Government is already doing many of the things the report recommends. The net zero strategy sets out our approach to maximising the opportunities that exist and how local and devolved administrations can contribute and benefit from the transition.
The report highlights some of the challenges which will be faced by rural areas in the transition to net zero. Does the Minister accept that solutions tailored for urban areas may very well not be appropriate in the countryside? And would he consider the recommendation made that there should be a bespoke net zero approach to rural areas to make sure that they don't get left behind?
My Lords, the Government is absolutely committed that rural areas should not be left behind, and takes the point that they are very different in essence to urban areas. However, we do not consider that we should have a separate rural strategy, but consider it as part of all of our activities.
Warwick of Undercliff.
My Lords, I declare my interest as Chair of the National Housing Federation. I know from talking to housing associations over the last few months how determined and ambitious they are to make homes greener and warmer for residents and to tackle climate change. But it can't be done alone. They're already planning to invest £70 billion in future-proofing, but our new estimates produced by Savills show it will cost an extra £36 billion to reach full decarbonisation by 2050. I welcome the additional £800 million announced last week, together with the heat and building strategy, a great step forward, but neither addresses the long-term funding gap to 2050. Will the Government work with the sector to help bridge this gap and to achieve the country's net zero ambitions?
My Lords, we recognise that there are considerable challenges in decarbonising our homes, and I make the commitment that we can work together to ensure that we help housing associations address those challenges.
Lord Flight.
My Lords, by how much is it estimated the cost of energy will increase for identified UK user groups as the result of achieving net zero?
Price and bill impacts will depend on electricity market developments and consumption patterns. Policies that improve energy efficiency of homes will reduce bills and benefit fuel-poor households. My noble friend will be pleased to know that we expect wholesale prices under a renewable-based electricity system to be lower than our current one based on fossil fuels.
Kennedy of Southwark.
My Lords, I refer the House to my interests as set out in the Register. Following up on the question set out by the Noble Lady Baroness Scott of Needham Market, rural areas face problems such as the reliance on private cars, a lack of charging point, the distance from decarbonisation industrial clusters, and a whole range of challenges faced by rural communities and rural local authorities. So, does the Noble Lord agree there are specific, unique issues to the countryside that need addressing to ensure no one is left behind? And if he does, while he said in his answer the Government do not plan to have a separate strategy, what is he doing to meet the challenge?
My Lords, the Government is providing many mechanisms to support rural areas. I point to the community energy projects through the Rural Community Energy Fund, which is a £10 million fund to support community-run projects in England that benefit the energy transition to net zero. And obviously, net zero is half the story. Adaptation to the consequences of climate change is equally important, and the Government is committing some £2.8 billion in a 6-year capital investment plan to reduce flood and coastal erosion risk.
Baroness Taylor of Enfield.
My Lords, local authorities are clearly critical to achieving the Government's net zero target, but will struggle to do so without sufficient resources. Indeed, some 95% of local authorities have said that funding is a barrier to them tackling climate change. The Climate Change Committee recommended increased resourcing for local government as a priority. Can the Noble Lord the Minister say whether and when the Government intends to give local authorities new capital and revenue raising powers to support the transition to net zero, as recommended in the SMF report?
My Lords, I point out that the Government has committed £1.2 billion for local action on climate change, and currently there are no plans to devolve additional tax raising powers, but obviously the Treasury will keep this matter under review.
Lord Berkeley.
My Lords, following the question of my noble friend Lord Kennedy and the Baroness Scott of Needham Market, in the report, which is the subject of this question, there's would the Minister agree that there's an enormous difference in the levelling up agenda between the problems in the north, particularly in the northeast, where I think 90% of the new built houses are still being heated by gas. So where is the policy to convert this to something more meaningful, whether it's electricity or hydrogen, at a lower cost? And what's the government doing about it? Because it is going to be a serious problem. London seems to be all right, but the rest of the country are going to suffer serious extra costs as a result of this.
My Lords, it is right that it's easier for London to hit the targets of net zero by 2050, given the starting point. But I point out that levelling up is about improving living standards and unleashing enterprise and growth across all parts of the UK and spreading opportunity. But it's also, most importantly, as well as the £8 billion levelling up fund, and that's important to see how that's allocated to deal with the Noble Lord's point. It is also fair to say we need to leverage in private sector funding as well, and our estimates currently that it will leverage in substantial amounts of private sector income to ensure that we can achieve the green revolution that we all want to see.